Hi, everybody. I'm Megan Maltonfort, Vice President of Sustainable Business with Cardinal Health. We're so happy to have you join us today on this webinar to learn more about our new health sector climate action survey, learn about why it's beneficial to use this survey across our industry, and also hear from some of my esteemed colleagues about how they're using it in practice. We can move to the next slide. So I'm going to spend about 10 minutes talking about the survey itself, how it came to be and how it evolved over time, and really what the benefits are for using the survey in your own organization. And then I'm going to be joined by a wonderful roundtable of industry experts that you see here for a great panel discussion, again, to really highlight how those across our industry are putting this survey into practice. So I'll be joined by Caleb Stargell, Manager of Supply Chain Sustainability at Advocate Health, Christina Indiviri, Vice President of Core Tenant Programs at Vizient, Ariel Russ, Sustainable Sourcing Program Manager at Kaiser Permanente, and Sharon Vidal, Global Head of ESG and Sustainability at Hologic. So we can move to the next slide, please. And the next. Thank you so much. So first, I really just want to start by grounding everybody in what is the Health Sector Climate Action Survey. And this survey really aims to standardize how healthcare suppliers report climate and sustainability data. It helps to reduce duplication of effort. It helps support transparency across our supply chain. And it also helps providers and suppliers share consistent information. This tool can ideally help engage suppliers in data collection, goal setting, and climate action. And you see the link here. I'm going to ask the NAM team to please drop the link in the chat if you're able to, so that everybody on the webinar today can have easy access to it. We can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So sharing a bit of the evolution of the Climate Action Survey. So the idea of the survey really began in 2024 amongst us distributors. We teamed up as distributors with our trade group, HDA, Healthcare Distribution Alliance. And we said, we've just set our science-based targets. Many of us are going to begin engaging our suppliers in our Scope 3 goals. Many of us had supplier engagement goals as part of our SBTI. And we knew that many of us purchase from the same suppliers. And so really the thinking was, how do we create a shared tool that we can collectively use so that we are not going to the same suppliers over and over with slightly different questions and slightly different formats. So really the ambition and goal here was to create a streamlined approach to engage our supply chain with consistent questions in an easy to engage format. So in 2004, we brought the idea, like I said, to our trade group, HDA. We began to draft the first version of the Health Sector Climate Action Survey, which at that point had no name. And then we realized after developing that initial draft of the survey that the survey could have a lot more reach beyond just us distributors. And so that's when we reached out to NAM, National Academy of Medicine, ClimateCollaborative, to see if they'd be interested in taking on the survey and continuing to evolve it so that we could have a wider reach and really access the broader healthcare industry. And so NAM, of course, said yes, which we were so pleased with. And the supply chain working group of the NAM Climate Collaborative decided to take this on as one of their 3 key deliverables for 2025. The survey, again, has evolved quite a bit over the year that it was being developed. And after testing with suppliers and health systems, the survey was finalized and launched publicly in June 2025. So again, we thank you for joining this webinar to learn more about the survey. We just continue to think about ways to access the industry and share with the industry the benefits of using this survey as we move forward. So we can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. There were a lot of benefits of this survey, and we as a team, as a working group, as part of NAM, really tossed around a lot of different ideas on how to host the survey, what format should we use, the types of questions, how long the survey should be. And ultimately, where we landed is we want this to be really easy for our suppliers. And the survey can absolutely be used with any supplier, but it is particularly useful for lower maturity suppliers because it is easy to use. It is Excel based, so the format is really familiar for them. The questions are there's just 20 questions. It's a really narrow focus and it's free, so we really want to promote that. This is a free tool. There's no cost to use it for anybody who's using it with their suppliers, and on the supplier side, there's no cost to respond. We thought about lots more questions than just the 20 key questions that we landed on, but we really wanted to think about what questions could we utilize the data in a meaningful way? And we really asked ourselves those hard questions as we thought about what we were going to include and what we were going to omit from the survey. There were a number of folks who said we need to get into more detail about product LCA and other areas. And so we decided in developing the survey that there would be the core set of 20 questions, which we'll take a look at on the next slide. And then there's an additional optional question section at the end where those utilizing the survey with their suppliers can add additional questions at their discretion. Another benefit of the survey is that the hope is that if you complete it one time and the industry actually adopts the survey, you can just complete it that one time and share it with many, many customers. And there's also an educational component in the survey. So as you look through the survey, you'll see that certain terms are marked in different colors. They've got little pop-up symbols next to those terminology, which includes definitions of terms. And then there is a definitions tab in the survey that further defines the terms as well as provides links to additional resources as a way to educate our suppliers in what we're asking about. So we can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. The survey is really primarily focused in four main sections: assess, strategize, implement, and disclose. I know that this is pretty small, but really the core questions that we're asking about include if the supplier measures their scope 1, 2, and 3 greenhouse gas emissions, if they don't, when they plan to disclose those emissions. Is their methodology aligned with the greenhouse gas protocol? Do they have external third-party assurance of their data? Do they allocate emissions to their customers? And in the strategize section, we're really looking to understand how they're planning to reduce their carbon footprint and their greenhouse gas emissions. So do they have publicly available climate goals? Are those goals science-based? If not, do they have a plan for science-based goals in the future? And what are some of their biggest barriers to setting a science-based target as a way to help partner with them in the future and hopefully remove some of those barriers together as an industry? The third section is the implement section. So this is really what is that supplier doing to act on climate? So how are they reducing greenhouse gas emissions? Check your top 3. And do you ask suppliers to meet climate-related standards or requirements? And then the final key section is around disclosure and reporting. So we ask if they report to a variety of different frameworks that are, we believe to be important and sort of industry standard. Do they have a public report that we can see? Do they have a publicly available climate action plan? And then, as I mentioned, there's the additional optional questions section, which has questions around climate-related partnerships with customers and if there's any interest in those partnerships, and if they offer environmentally preferable products. So you can see, just before we go to the next slide, I want to call out that you can see some of these words are in blue, not black, and they've got little red triangles next to them. Each of those terms will be defined with a pop-up when you scroll your mouse over them. And then each of those terms, if we move to the next slide, will also be defined in our definitions tab with additional resources for the supplier to learn more about these terms if they are not familiar with them. We also tried our best to make as many of these questions yes, no, or drop-down options, multiple choice, again, just to make this as easy as possible for our suppliers. And we can move to the last slide, please. Thank you. So finally, I just want to share that we do have best practices for use on the NAM Health Sector Climate Action Survey website, which we would encourage you all to check out. Really, these best practices for use are aimed to maintain the integrity of the survey. The questions should not be altered, those main 20 questions. Additional custom questions, like I said, can absolutely be added in the additional optional questions section at the end of the survey. And if healthcare providers are choosing to customize questions at the end, they should absolutely alert their suppliers that there are additional custom questions when they request their supplier to complete the survey so those aren't missed. I can say personally, we've had customers reach out with just the core 20 questions, and then we've had others who have added a couple of additional questions, and we've gone to kind of upload and attach our survey to their email request and then realized, okay, we need to actually go in and answer those couple of additional questions. So make sure that when you're communicating with your suppliers, you let them know. And then finally, suppliers should absolutely download and save the survey before they complete it. We've had a couple of little snags with cells not expanding the way they should be or things like that. So as long as you download and save it to your computer, there's been no issues. And once you complete it, then you can share it directly with any customer who requests it from you. Okay, I think that is all I had. So with that, I will welcome the panel, and I see you all here. So thank you again for being with us today. And I am going to kick it off with our first question because we are all at different levels of maturity in terms of engaging suppliers in climate action, and that is perfectly okay. So I'd be interested in understanding from each of you, if you can share where you are in the supplier engagement journey right now. How do you engage your own suppliers? How have you engaged them in the past? And how are you utilizing the survey or plan to utilize the survey to engage your suppliers moving forward? So, Caleb, I'll start with you, and then we'll move around the table. Thank you.
I knew that was coming. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Caleb Stargell. As Megan said, I lead our supply chain sustainability efforts at Advocate Health. Overall, we just from a program perspective, we are committed to leading in environmental sustainability. So we have some pretty robust environmental commitments publicly available that we're really heading towards. So reducing our scope 1 and 2 emissions by 50% by 2030, in addition to carbon neutrality by 2030. And then the big work, as I call it, the big bad ugly, striving for net zero by 2050. And it's very clear to us, we cannot, and really all, I think all of us on this panel, that we cannot meet these commitments without our suppliers, having the same commitments and ultimately being on the same reduction pathways. So I think from an assessment and engagement perspective, I think we're pretty farther along on our journey. We are, assessing supplier sustainability, maturity, really putting them in a place of ultimately, are they starting out or are they really leading in their own space and in their own industry? Outside of and in addition to assessing our suppliers' maturity and program, if they don't have anything in place, we're working with them from, really hand holding and ensuring that they are setting those publicly available reduction targets, that they are, implementing those reduction levers. And then for the suppliers that, we deem are pretty farther along, we're actively sort of plugging into their existing programming. And I'll say, we do sort of driving that engagement work at Advocate. We have our own supplier facing science-based target goal. So we are looking at and sort of expecting, and pretty soon we'll be mandating that suppliers representing about 70% of our emissions that cover our purchase goods and services, as well as transportation and distribution, that they have their own science-based aligned target set in place. And how can we work together to set those and monitor and track progress? So let's say we're pretty far down the engagement pathway, and excited to and really leveraging the climate survey to help us in those assessment engagements. So
Thank you, Caleb. Ariel, I'm going to go to you next.
So thank you for having me also. Nam, I appreciate that being here representing Kaiser Permanente. So Kaiser Permanente has been addressing sustainability opportunities with suppliers for over 20 years. We've partnered with suppliers to reduce chemicals of concern, packaging, and now climate impacts. And similarly to what Caleb was mentioning at Advocate, we also are asking our suppliers to set their own science-based targets or similarly establish public goal. And we have our own goals that will help us meet as well. And in terms of how we've been engaging with suppliers on climate previously, we had our own survey that was similar to the NAM survey, but this year we decided to switch to the NAM survey to align with all these fantastic companies represented here. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And Sharon, you are our supplier representative on this panel, so thank you for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about where you're at in terms of maturity?
Yeah, absolutely. So we, like all of you, have sort of the upstream and the downstream element. So in terms of our overall sustainability program, I would classify us as, well established. We have our science-based targets that have been validated, net zero commitments. We're focused on sustainable facilities, sustainability in our product, and climate action throughout the whole value chain. But specifically on the supplier engagement piece of us engaging our own suppliers, I think if I look at the maturity spectrum defined as starting or intermediate and advanced, then I think we're closer to between early and intermediate. It's like we know what we want to do when we grow up, and we basically have a good roadmap on how to get there, but we're, in the early stages for really implementing that level of engagement. So we're just getting started. We just completed our second round of our Scope 3 emission footprint assessment, and that's for our current reporting year. So last year was really the first action plan that we had based on data-driven approaches. And prior to that Scope 3, we've done some assessments of our key suppliers who already had some science-based targets. We added some governance to our own supplier code of conduct, and we're setting expectations to our suppliers. But after that Scope 3, we were really able to focus on the top 200 out of the thousands and thousands of suppliers. And we're able to, identify that 200 is really reflecting the 80% of our emissions. So that's where we're focusing our efforts on connecting and making a bigger impact. And so that's really kind of where we are for now.
Thank you, Sharon. That's fantastic. And Christina, tell us where Vizient is at.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Christina Intiberry from Vizient. Proud to report that Vizient is well along in our supplier engagement journey. For years, we have been actively partnering with suppliers to advance sustainability maturity while convening provider clients and suppliers to foster transparent, action-oriented dialogue across the healthcare market. And as a healthcare performance improvement company, we see our role as both an enabler and a convener, helping to reduce friction, align expectations, and also accelerate progress at scale. Looking ahead, the NAM Health Sector Climate Action Survey is a critical tool in advancing this work. Its use has been an ongoing topic of discussion within Vizient's Sustainability Advisory Council. It's a group of about 25 leading provider organizations from across the country. And last year, in 2025, the council reviewed a comprehensive set of supplier sustainability and climate action questions with a clear objective: condense and standardize a list that could be used not only by Vizient, but also our clients as well. And that outcome was a streamlined, standardized approach that incorporates the NAM Health Sector Climate Action Survey alongside some other key priority sustainability questions, creating a common foundation for supplier engagement moving forward.
Thank you, Christina. Well, hopefully the participants can see we are joined by the right folks here. So I really, really appreciate each of you for being a part of this discussion. For those who have already sent out the survey, what has been the response from your suppliers? And did you prepare your suppliers in any way before sending the survey to increase your success rate? That could be helpful to share out with those on the call. So Ariel, I'll start with you.
Sure. So we sent out our emails with our request for information, and we said we are directly aligning with NAM, and we've added our own questions. So we made it crystal clear as recommended by Megan herself just several moments ago.
Thank you. Caleb?
Yeah, I'll say the response has been really great, and shout out to Sharon and Hologic for being here as they were one of our respondents. Ultimately, when I engage suppliers or I'm asking for any sort of data, I really try to look at it from the supplier's lens, and they're equally as busy as as I am. So I feel like when it came and comes to the survey, I take a different approach, and so instead of sending out this blanket, which is not a bad thing, but a blanket approach to several suppliers or blanket requests. I really, we have a targeted sustainability engagement strategy within our business review process and our vendor management office. And so I actually sit in every single one of our business reviews. You should see my very dark blue calendar. But we are looking at that supplier maturity and determining whether or not they should get the supplier. And so we have this, I think, targeted approach. And so taking that sort of one by one, supplier by supplier approach has really helped, garner participation and submissions. And moreover, I look at it as in that way, we're actually able to leverage the data and move the data to actual action. And so we're not asking for this, survey and then the supplier is never hearing back, or we just have too many responses that we don't know what to do with. So I think taking that targeted approach within our business reviews has helped to definitely get. I haven't had a no yet, which is great. And then also to your point earlier, Megan, where you do it once for one, this isn't an ecosystem. We're all together engaging in some way. So you do it once, you already have it completed, and we've received that feedback that we're excited. We already have it done, and it was easy just to submit. And the last thing I'll say is you called me out. I don't know if you saw my face, but we have added Advocate. We put 2 additional questions on the survey, Advocate specific. And I don't know, I have to go back and look, but I don't know that I've called that out in our instructions to suppliers. So Sharon, I'm sorry if that has impacted you in any way. And Megan, thanks for, slapping it. But I will definitely do that moving forward.
Thanks, Caleb. Listen, there's no shame here. We're all figuring this out together. So thanks.
Exactly.
Christina, how's it been for you?
Sure. We have tried to be very intentional in preparing suppliers prior to utilizing the survey. And we've established a sustainability supplier task force made up of approximately 20 to 25 global leading suppliers representing the healthcare market. And this group meets monthly and plays a key advisory role for us in shaping our strategy and ensuring that the tools and the resources we're developing and utilizing are both meaningful and aligned with not only client, but also supplier expectations. So as part of this process, we engaged our sustainability supplier task force in direct discussions about standardizing supplier sustainability and climate related questions, including a very direct conversation on the NAM Healthcare Climate Action Survey. And the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Our suppliers have expressed strong support for the survey structure, the content, particularly its potential to reduce duplication and reporting fatigue, which we've heard about from many of our suppliers. So that early engagement has really helped to drive alignment, trust, and also to hopefully have a very strong response when we formally distribute the survey and incorporate it in our RFI and RFP process.
Thank you. That is so great to hear. So thank you for that. Sharon, I want to come to you next. I'm really interested in hearing what the process and experience look like for you as a supplier responding to the survey, at least on behalf of Advocate Health. You may have responded on behalf of other customers as well, but can you tell us what the process was like for you, what the experience was like?
Yeah, absolutely. I think even if we had not had the proactive engagement from Caleb and the Advocate Health team, which was fantastic to start us off, I think if I had even just received it blind as someone who is a frequent responder and contributor to inquiries from customers around the globe on our own sustainability program, I greatly appreciated the fact that it was such a focused scope. The format was really simple to use. There was no cost, and there were really clear instructions. I didn't have to log into a portal. I wasn't sent a screenshot from the commercial teams, their login to some portal. There was no membership fee, and I could download the survey. So even if it was a question that, wasn't something I could provide directly within my team, it's set up so you can forward that to other functional groups or get input and work offline. You're also able to see the whole scope of it. I mean, sometimes these surveys, you only see a piece of it until you answer, and then, more gets unlocked. And so in order to, facilitate collaboration, this was a really great model. I think it was fantastic to have the educational resources that were linked, and it just speaks to a range of maturity levels that are likely going to be out there when you're dealing with, kind of knowledge topic on these themes. So these were all data requests that are core to what we're already disclosing. So it was easy to pull that information either from our sustainability report or from our data management platform and highlighted, the most important things for our industry. So it was, one of the best experiences we've had in terms of, surveys for supply chain and sustainability.
Thank you, Sharon. I so appreciate your perspective. And that's exactly what our goal was, to make it easy for suppliers. So thank you. So I want to talk a little bit about data now. So Christina, I'm going to start with you, and then Caleb will go over to you because I know you've actually got some slides to share. But what do you plan to do with the data now that you're starting to collect it from your suppliers?
Great question. So our focus is on ensuring the data is not only collected, but meaningfully operationalized in ways that directly support client needs and supplier transparency. So when suppliers choose to share data directly with Vizient, we plan to securely store it and activate the most decision-relevant elements based on clear client demand. So rather than treating the survey as a static reporting exercise, we are intentionally prioritizing the data points our clients are asking for most, particularly supplier carbon emissions disclosure, progress against climate action goals, and indicators of maturity and accountability. These elements will be operationalized through Vizient tools and platforms, including possible integration within our contract catalog where feasible, while also allowing clients to access these insights at the point of purchasing and strategy development. So this approach allows us to strike the right balance of respecting data limitations and system constraints while still translating supplier reported information into practical, usable intelligence. Ultimately, our goal is to make climate data actionable, supporting our clients as they manage Scope 3 emissions, which is the big, hairy, audacious goal right now, identify aligned supplier partners, and lastly, advancing their broader sustainability objectives.
Thank you, Christina. I think many of us suppliers have been in a position where we've responded to surveys and we've thought, now where does the data go? It goes into this big black hole. Nobody, are folks using it? Are we going to engage around the data? So it's great to hear more about how Vizient plans to use the data in the future. Caleb, over to you.
I mean, how do I follow that? Great job, Christina. I need to learn from you. Fantastic work. I think ultimately, similarly as well, the key word here is actionable. I mean, moving from just requesting data and talking about it to like actual, tangible, impactful, quantifiable, measurable results and progress. So, the survey definitely helps really create the vehicle for that. And moreover, another point that Christina hit on that's key for us is it's helping us identify the right suppliers and the ones that we want to prioritize our business on, for, and with, because we want to do business with suppliers that are on that same journey with us. And again, the key here is we're all on the journey, we're all in different parts of it, and that's okay as long as we're heading to the same destination. And so, sort of speaking of that journey, I say come up with my own. I'm sure if you have your own maturity segmentation and sort of the lens that you're looking at supplier sustainability through, we're probably aligned here. But this is how I look at suppliers' journey. So non-existent, pretty straightforward. They don't have anything in place, and we really need to do some hand holding to get them farther along. Developing, they're really starting out. Their emissions are measured by scope. They have a little bit of publicly available evidence, such as an ESG report or component of ESG in their overall annual report, starting to converse with us at Advocate on, again, sort of how can we collaborate and move the meter forward. Advancing, they do have a strategy in place. They have publicly committed emission reduction targets. They're disclosing those targets. They're engaging in these sorts of conversations and consortiums across the industry. And ultimately, they, are aligned with Advocate and where we're going. And the last is, you're leading, and sometimes we see our suppliers are doing way better of a job than us, and I learn from them. But I look at leading as a supplier has a publicly available an operational plan to reduce their emissions and achieve their reduction goals that they've set forward. They're providing, and I know this is a little bit of a taboo subject, but they are providing or on a journey to provide category or product level emissions data, so LCAs and PCFs. We're entering in sort of strategic partnerships with these suppliers with clear defined goals, for reductions, and then we're setting contractual targets and KPIs in place based on our different partnerships. And so as I assess our top suppliers in this maturity, I think we can move to the next slide. The survey really lends itself to helping me place our suppliers in one of those buckets. And sort of corresponding with, and this is very like my first edition, y'all, but corresponding with the survey, I've created a scorecard to really illustrate where those suppliers are at and identify the opportunities, either, I don't want to say improvement, but just growth, and moreover, and more importantly, collaboration. This, I mentioned it previously, this is shared within our business reviews. Megan, coincidentally, was in a business review with us today. And you have, our VP of sourcing and VP of that and this. And so it's a really great opportunity to highlight in front of key leadership where our important suppliers are. And so relative to logic, I'm not going to go through, but I have my set sort of criteria, again, mapped back to maturity as well as the survey itself and the data that we are gleaning, and kind of place them in different buckets. Overall, Hologic is great. Hologic is leading. And most importantly, they're here. They're at the table. They're lending their voice. They want to collaborate, and that's all we can ask for. And lastly, I'll just say, I think the actions, again, resulting from what we learned in the survey is, you guys have emission reduction targets, and that's the main thing that we look at in purchasing, in these what we're looking for in our suppliers on their journey. That's sort of the foundational thing. And moreover, it became clear through the survey that you guys do have an LCA in place, which is great. So how can we do it? I think next steps is we want to do an audit of our purchases against that LCA and others that you may have coming down the pike to incorporate that data into our own emissions inventory. But you get the gist. I'm really excited where this landed. And I think, Susan or Sharon, I turn it over to you and your thoughts and maybe some actions on your side of the fence that came from, overall this scorecard and survey and engagement.
Yeah, thanks, Caleb. For us, the experience we had with the whole process was really positive, and we were engaged proactively in the conversation. So, even before we got the survey, Caleb and his team met with my sustainability team and our commercial team through that business review, which was a great platform for us both to share, our targets, the programs that we're both working on, and then highlight some of the synergies. So the survey came after that, and following the survey, it felt like a really strong partnership approach because we got feedback on the data and the classification. And it was unique because, the program is so comprehensive that, there are elements where we are in a, industry leading status, and there are areas that we are very early on. And one of the benefits I found or hope to gain from the collaboration is to learn from some of the other companies that are further along in different points. So we're just getting started on product level carbon footprinting or assigning an allocation of carbon to a customer or to an actual product that we're selling. And so each of these elements, I think we can share what has worked well for us. And then the areas that, we're still developing, I'm really anticipating some strength in learning from others. So all around, it was a great positive experience. I can't wait to see what comes next.
And Sharon, not to call you out, and you don't feel like you need to share publicly if you don't want to, but I think really underpinning that is if you look at sort of my fourth criteria on the left, it's like, does the supplier engage not just with Advocate, but in industry collaborations and consortiums, because there are several out there. And as you'll see, there is was currently, based on what we glean in the survey, a blank. But again, you don't have to share. I will just preface highly and say that it is no longer a blank, which we're excited about.
That's right. I think, one of the things that we gained out of it was really exposure to some of the collaborations that are out there, like NAM. And as a result of being part of this survey, we now are actual participants and have joined as a participant of the NAM climate and health movement. So that, as well as some of the other collaborations that are out there. So it was, an educational element for us to introduce what is out there specifically for our industry, and to be able to leverage everything within this healthcare ecosystem that we're all crossing and having synergies. I mean, there's no reason for each of us to start from scratch when there's so much that's impacting each of our supply chains. So yes, we're very proud to be part of the movement and appreciate the introduction.
Excited to have you. And I'll just end with, I think next steps and future horizon planning, really looking to see how I can sort of automate what is my slide deck or slide scorecard that you see now when in a very manual process. So the will be my next steps, is hopefully leveraging some technology to streamline the process, but excited where it's at.
Well, congratulations, Sharon, on joining the National Academy of Medicine. That's really, really exciting. And I'm curious if anybody else has identified any other opportunities like that. Sharon mentioned two opportunities actually from taking the survey. One was around allocation of emissions to customers, I believe, and then the other was a potentially engaging in these collaboratives like NAM. Anybody else on the line identify other opportunities in either your use of the survey with your own suppliers or responding to the survey on behalf of a customer?
I'll add just one other thing that I thought helped us by going through this very simplified approach. As we were engaging our own supply chain, we started to kind of go down the rabbit hole of a really, really extensive survey. So in addition to all the sustainability elements of, climate action and emissions, it was water and waste and human rights and cybersecurity, and it just went on, and it became unruly, and we had a really low participation rate. And so by going through this experience with a very focused scope and very simplified, and seeing the results of having a high return, we've actually adjusted our own approach and simplified it to try and get to the most important information and be able to increase that engagement rate. So that really helps put things in perspective.
That's fantastic. Christina, do you have anything to add on opportunities for improvement that you might have identified?
Definitely. For us, an important opportunity emerged through feedback from our Sustainability Advisory Council last year, actually, which called for a more holistic and standardized approach to supplier sustainability assessment. So in response to that, we worked through a very deliberate prioritization process, identifying the most impactful questions from the NAM Health Sector Climate Action Survey, and also integrating them with broader sustainability criteria, such as environmental preferred purchasing, sustainability governance, and public reporting. So our end result is a more comprehensive supplier sustainability scorecard, very similar to what Caleb shared. So while not every single NAM question is included, most of them are. Many of the most critical elements are embedded within the scorecard. And this approach allows us to continuously redefine how we collect, manage, and apply climate data, ensuring that it remains actionable, relevant, and aligned with both supplier capabilities and client needs at the same time.
Thank you. I'm not surprised that you all are taking such an organized and methodical approach, so appreciate that. Um, how do you think the survey, and I'm going to start with you, Caleb, how do you think the survey can help your organization ultimately advance climate action in your supply chain?
I think what I mentioned previously is that it helps you identify the suppliers that you want to partner with on your journey. And B, it really helps identify the areas of opportunity to progress in terms of like what we've mentioned historically, the theme of, setting who has emission reduction targets and how are they tracking toward them, who has the LCAs and PCFs and what are those products and how can you incorporate that, you know, more accurate data and move away from a spend approach. So I think there's lots of, you don't know what you don't know in terms of your suppliers and their sustainability journey and the joint collaboration. So this is definitely very illuminating in terms of a tool to use to identify those gaps and where you can jointly work together to move the meter forward.
Thank you. Ariel, how about you?
Yeah, so some similar themes that have been shared with my fellow panelists. So definitely makes it a lot easier to, apples to apples compare companies and to understand where companies are in that maturity scale that Caleb outlined. And that also helps us figure out like where we need to put in more effort. So like others have mentioned, right? You want to possibly focus on those companies that don't necessarily have the sustainability commitments, and then how do we work with them to work with their own leadership, for example, and how to set those sustainability targets. So I think this just makes it a little bit easier to identify and like collate all that information in one place.
And one thing I want to add is, and we're not here yet as an organization and even as an industry because of just the critical nature, but we look at this when we're making award, like from an RFP, when we're making award decisions. And sometimes those decisions are based on specific products and, of course, patient outcomes and safety and the care, obviously. But I would love, and we are heading to a direction where you're not even invited to bid or you are not down selected if you don't have any of these things in place, if you're not on this journey, if you're not answering our engagements, if you're not completing the survey, and we're not there yet. And I don't mean it to sound as coarse as it does, but if we want to see actual change, like that's sort of the way we have to operate with our dollars in the direction that we're heading.
Thank you. Thank you, Caleb. I think that's a really important point. I can say just working at a global company, we're seeing a lot of pressure outside of the US in bids and tenders, and they rate sustainability very, very high, sometimes 20+% in a tender, and it's not necessarily the same in the US quite yet. So we're sitting waiting. So we would encourage it for sure. All right. My final question is just to the group. We talked a lot about the benefits of the survey. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you think is worth sharing before we open it up to questions from the audience?
I've seen some good questions come through, so
Yeah, I think I just have one thing that like we've touched on, but like I think that we can emphasize it more is that like because the health systems are aligning hopefully on this damn survey, and like we're setting the stage of like what we expect for our suppliers, and therefore like our suppliers can take those conversations again to their leadership to like say these are what our customers are saying, and hopefully that makes it a little bit easier for our suppliers who are maybe having a more difficult time getting those goals set, setting them.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to jump in. I know we spoke to it, but I just want to re-emphasize the importance of efficiency. From our perspective, one of the primary benefits of using the NAM Climate Action Survey is the ability to collect supplier climate data in a transparent, fast, and very efficient manner. So because suppliers are increasingly familiar with these standardized questions, we're hoping to see responses become more consistent, easier to aggregate, reducing follow-up, reducing any sort of interpretation challenges, and also getting that information faster so we could share it out. This efficiency enables us to really operationalize the data more effectively and also make it available to our clients in ways that directly support decision making, excuse me. So with clear, more comparable information, clients can be better equipped to make more informed purchasing decisions and really identify suppliers that are aligned with their sustainability goals, and also engage strategic partners to support Scope 3 emissions reduction, which still continues to be a very hot topic in all of our council and task force meetings. So ultimately, the use of this standardized survey strengthens transparency across the supply chain while also improving speed and the quality of insights that are delivered to our clients.
Thank you so much. I could not have summed it up better, Christina. So thank you. Let's go to the Q&A now. We've got about 15 minutes left, so thank you to those who have submitted your questions. Please continue to submit them in the Q&A box at the bottom. The first question I'm going to start with is to all of you. So are any of the panelists actively engaging their suppliers to support them with training or other enabling initiatives as a way to support the suppliers that are engaged with the survey?
Caleb, you start.
So if I understood the question correctly, I would say yes, and happy to point to another really exciting NAM partnership and collaboration. So there is a curriculum that we are piloting around climate objectives and learnings specific for healthcare suppliers called Supplier Locked Leadership on Climate Transitions. I should know that, y'all. So sorry if I'm spreading the wrong acronym, but it is Supplier Locked. So yeah, we at Advocate are leveraging that. I'm a one-man band, so we definitely want to, if we're putting an expectation to suppliers out there to set these goals and put these levers in place, we want to provide the tools and resources for those to do it, for those suppliers to do it. And that tool and resource can't always be me. So we are leveraging other initiatives like Supplier Locked and sort of external trainings to upskill our suppliers. And that's something that we do pay for on the healthcare side, with obviously dedicated and consistent participation from the supplier side. So yeah, we are definitely, if we're going to expect you to do it, we're going to help you get there. At least that's my philosophy.
And to supplement what Caleb shared, yes, a resounding yes. We are also participating in the Supplier Locked pilot, where we're paying a small fee to bring this incredible sustainability and climate action training and educational virtual models to a subset of suppliers. We're piloting it. We're going to see how it goes, what the feedback is, but our hope is to provide it widely to all of our suppliers so that we can boost training, boost the resources that we provide, and also ensure scalable action and impact.
Thank you
I think
so
we're
much.
earlier in
Sharon.
the process, so I'll just share, example on the other end of the, the spectrum for the supplier. And we have not pushed it out yet, but we are developing some content to share with suppliers. And we did make a strategic decision that our approach would be more of a partnership and support rather than a stick. And we do have customers where we're responding to that there are requirements for sustainability elements, and it certainly is a business driver for us to continue our program maturity. But for our own supply chain, it is more of a how can we enable you on your own sustainability journey to move it along. So we are creating some assets that will describe, some low-hanging fruit for scope 1 and 2 efficiencies like LEDs or, transitions or energy audits or green teams or anything that will help them with some tactical examples that take some of the terminology and turn it into, there might already be things happening that they just haven't reported. And so we're trying to create some materials that can go out with not only here's what our targets are, here's what our expectations are, but here are some, starter points to get you on the journey. So I look forward to seeing what comes out of the training pilot, and maybe we can leverage that in the future. But I definitely think it's a nice add to help our own supply chain.
Thank you all so much for the robust answer to that question. Really appreciate you all. The next question is, have any of the panelists seen changes in response levels or other comments in the past 6 to 12 months with the political changes in the US?
Does anyone else want to go first before I go?
I'll follow you.
Go for it.
I'll be quick. I can get in the weeds, but I I won't say so much change in engagement. I will say change in sharing that engagement externally, highlighting that engagement. So we may not be broadcasting our collaborations or our work, but it's still happening behind the scenes. So again, not so much a decrease in engagement, just communicating the engagement.
Completely agree with Caleb's sentiments. We have not had, thankfully, one client or supplier pull away from this work. We haven't had one change in priorities. In fact, we're continuing to see this work prioritized and asked about from C-suites, boards, you name it. But exactly what Caleb said still rings true. There is a change in the vocal nature of this work. It's much quieter. It's happening behind the scenes. Um, there is some concern and hesitation about sharing anything publicly. But what I've seen and heard, the data that is being collected, it's still continuing. The great work is still being done. Questions are being asked about scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. There's great synergies and collaboration about how do we scale this together. It's just being framed also differently. So there are some key buzzwords that people seem to be staying away from, and there seems to be this increased focus, certainly from the Vizient side, on increases in efficiency, resiliency, fiscal sustainability, as well as improved human health outcomes.
Thank you so much. Sharon, I see you off mute. I just want to make sure you weren't going to jump in before we move to the next question.
No, nothing really unique there. Similar.
All right. Great. Well, let's move to the next question. And this is a tough one. What is the tipping point where we see this survey becoming the standard instrument? How far away from that point are we now? And what needs to be done to get there?
Anyone want to go first? I'll speak selfishly and say for Advocate, we are really trying to lean on technology and automation to help execute some of these engagement, reporting, um, evaluating processes. So we are actually we have selected a GHG data management solution. I don't know if I can share who, but similar to the Persephone's, watersheds, etc. So we are onboarding that very soon, that solution. And I think overall, to bury the lead, it's going to be, is that solution that is hopefully provides automation and a streamlined way of doing things. Hopefully that absorbs and connects with the survey and does, or is it going to supersede it in a way that I can just push a button, something goes out and comes back. So ultimately, again, to say bury the lead twice, I think it's just going to be how does the manual Excel compete with technology? That's, I think, my tipping point. The content's there, the collaboration is there, it's the right move, it's the right tool. But I think automation is going to be that tipping point, in my opinion, selfishly.
Not surprised that Colin asked such a poignant and polished question. I completely agree with Caleb, and I would add volume, scalable impact. A lot of people are talking about it now. I think it's going to take all of us together, clients, providers, suppliers, GPOs, to utilize these standard tools. And then we'll start to see a tipping point and some quicker movement. I don't know where we are now. I think we're more at the nascent stages of that, but what I'm hearing and seeing is wonderful. It's very positive change around different industry organizations, different collaboratives, councils, and task forces wanted to really partner together and do this work as a team because we know it takes a village if we're all going to be successful. So while I believe we're a bit away from the point now, I do have very high hopes for the future.
It was something that drew, me into wanting to participate is that concept of, complete once for many. And so I think, the more that we can encourage awareness and participation, the better it will be for all of us. I think regardless of the tipping point, I think one of the benefits of the simple approach is that it is so focused and relevant to what's likely going to be a mandatory reporting in the near future in some element for at least scope 1 and 2, that regardless, it is setting a strong foundation for our industry and the whole value chain to start to collect that reporting kind of muscle and get started on that. So hopefully both of those working together in terms of voluntary reporting and regulatory compliance will push the wave to that tipping point.
Thank you so much. Sharon, there's a question directed at you around asking if you can share more about how you are now allocating emissions to clients. I'm not sure that you are yet, but if you are, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I'll just clarify that that was an area that we were scored in a developing status of our maturity index rather than leadership. And it's definitely an area that we are challenged with. We know, we have customers, throughout the EU that are asking very frequently for their impact specifically on the products that we're shipping. And so first step is really understanding a product level footprint. So we've done a couple pilots on comparing, a process level of, something that's in the OR that we can now move, patient safety into a doctor's office. And we've also done product level life cycle assessments that are the full scope that include not just carbon, but health and toxicity and water. And it was an experience for sure. And so if we think about how can we scale that into the thousands of products that we would need to create, and then identify how do we allocate that based on either revenue or location or the shipment, and integrate all the scope 3 data that we have. So very early on, I think what we've learned from our early LCAs is that we'll likely pivot to do focused carbon only, so that we can do more products in the short term rather than this massive deep dive. A lot of the value comes from comparing, and when you just get a number, it is, a number of what that, footprint is, but without a change in the product or comparing it to, another company's similar product, it doesn't quite have the relevancy. So in terms of action-oriented data, I think our approach is going to be carbon product footprints and try to hit as many of our product classes that can then insight our product development and really start to make changes so that we can lower the footprint and then report that to get that data out into our, our customers and suppliers.
Thank you, Sharon.
But if anyone has an answer to that one, we'll take it. We'd love to learn if you are further along.
Thank you. So, go ahead, Ariel.
Just from the recipient perspective of seeing the answers to that question, there's been a wide variety in allocation methodologies that have been called out with the little notes section in the last column of the survey. And so I think it'll be interesting to see if there's alignment there in terms of what the industry decides to do moving forward on what that methodology looks like for allocations and product level work.
Thank you. So we've got one question that I'm actually going to take, if that's okay, and that's, are there plans to create a scoring or ranking rubric for this survey? And it's a question that we've gotten a few times. I think you've seen some examples of how those using the survey are starting to think about this. We are still determining our focus for the supply chain working group of NAM for this year. So nothing is off the table. We'll certainly keep this as part of the discussion, but more to come. So please stay tuned in what our focus will be. Certainly part of our focus for this year is to continue scaling this survey and figuring out how to make this easy for suppliers, easy for healthcare organizations, and this may be part of it. So stay tuned. I really appreciate everybody's engagement, the questions. Thank you to our panelists, just unbelievable insights from the team. The recordings, slides, any shared resources that we talked about today will be posted to the NAM webpage in the coming weeks. So if you're interested in sharing this more broadly, please keep your eyes on the NAM website and please use the survey. We would just ask you to get engaged with the survey. If you have questions, please reach out to the NAM staff. They're wonderful, and we're really excited to have you join us on this journey of standardization. So thank you, everybody, so much.